My brother took valuable tech equipment from a job my husband secured for him. And now my parents are insisting I pressure my husband to rehire him, threatening to disown me if I don't comply. I'm a 34-year-old woman raised in a family where loyalty to relatives was paramount, no matter the cost. My younger brother, Jake, 29, has always been the favorite in my parents' eyes. Growing up, whenever Jake got into trouble, I was expected to sort it out. If he wrecked my bike as a kid, I got scolded for letting him use it and had to give up my pocket money to cover repairs. If he flunked a class, I was pushed to tutor him daily, even if it meant sacrificing my own hobbies. I became the default fixer for Jake's chaos. I care about him, but he's impulsive, charming when he wants something, yet allergic to accountability. I worked hard to carve out a stable life. I went to college, landed a solid career, and married my husband, Dan, 36, who's kind, dependable, and a dedicated worker. He's been with his company for over 10 years, rising to a managerial role at a mid-sized tech hardware firm. He oversees inventory and logistics for expensive electronic gear and takes his responsibilities seriously, especially when vouching for someone. My parents have never hesitated to ask for favors for Jake. Money for car repairs, a place to stay. We let him use our guest room last year after a breakup, you name it. They always framed it as family supports family. I helped when I could but started setting boundaries as I got older, like refusing to lend money after too many unpaid loans. My parents didn't take that well, guilt-tripping me about how I'm thriving while Jake struggles, and how I owe it to family to share my success. It's draining. A few months ago, Jake was unemployed again. His work history is patchy, brief stints in retail and warehouses, none lasting long. My parents called, hinting heavily that Dan could get Jake a job at his company, saying he just needed a break. I was reluctant. Mixing family and work can end badly. But Jake pleaded, swearing he'd turn things around and make me proud. After weeks of pressure and seeing him so desperate, I gave in. I spoke to Dan, who was skeptical but agreed to help. He pulled strings to get Jake an entry-level role on his team, managing inventory records and assisting in the warehouse. It wasn't flashy, but it paid well with benefits, a real opportunity. Dan warned us both that recommending Jake was a risk. If Jake messed up, it'd reflect poorly on him. I assured Dan I understood and genuinely believed Jake would step up. For the first month, things seemed fine. Jake showed up on time and Dan gave me brief updates like, "He's doing okay." I thought maybe this time it'd work out. Then everything fell apart. One evening, Dan came home unusually quiet. He sat me down and said there was an issue with Jake at work. My heart sank. He explained that several high-value graphics cards, worth thousands each, had vanished from the inventory cage. Security footage showed Jake trying to smuggle them out in his backpack. I was horrified. When confronted, Jake first claimed he thought they were defective items being discarded, an obvious lie. Then he admitted he planned to sell them for cash. It was a disaster. The company has a strict no-theft policy, so HR fired Jake immediately and escorted him out. That night, my parents bombarded me with calls. Still reeling, I answered, "Big mistake." They were furious, claiming Jake told them he was wrongly blamed for missing items. I explained he was caught on camera, but they refused to listen. My dad said something like, "Your husband should have protected family. What's a few gadgets?" I was floored. I argued Dan had already helped by getting Jake the job, and Jake blew it. My mom, crying, said I should beg Dan to reinstate Jake because he'd struggle otherwise, and somehow I should have stopped this. I told them I wouldn't ask Dan to risk his reputation by rehiring a thief. That sparked a shouting match. They accused me of abandoning family for my husband, saying my loyalty should be with them. It ended with my dad issuing an ultimatum. Convince Dan to rehire Jake or find him another role at the company, or don't bother contacting them again. He said if I wouldn't help my brother, I wasn't a good daughter or sister. Stunned, I yelled that Jake did this to himself and hung up. That was days ago. I haven't spoken to them since. I texted Jake asking what he was thinking and saying I couldn't help him. He didn't reply but posted a vague social media rant about disloyal family, likely aimed at me. I'm torn. My upbringing taught me family comes first, and I feel terrible about this rift. Part of me wonders if I could have pushed Dan harder, though I know rehiring Jake is impossible. Another part is furious at Jake's stupidity and my parents' demands. Dan supports me, saying Jake can't be rehired and my parents are unreasonable. Logically, I know he's right, but I feel guilty for getting Jake the job in the first place. Did I set him up to fail? Am I wrong for refusing to beg Dan to overlook my brother's theft? Edit. Many asked why the company didn't press charges. Dan intervened, convincing his bosses to just fire Jake and not involve the police, likely to spare me the family fallout. My parents know this but still act like Jake's the victim. Update 1. Thank you for the overwhelming support and honesty. Your responses helped me see this clearly. Many pointed out that my parents' enabling of Jake is a long-standing issue. I recalled a time when Jake, in his late teens, got caught shoplifting. My parents smoothed it over with the store owner, avoiding charges. I begged them to let him face consequences, but they grounded him briefly and called it a misunderstanding. Jake learned he'd always be bailout out. Your comments made me realize I've been cast as Jake's fixer my whole life. The consensus was that I'm not wrong, which I needed to hear. You also said enabling Jake prevents him from growing. I'm taking that to heart. To answer common questions, did this hurt Dan's job? Yes, he had an awkward meeting with his bosses, apologizing for vouching for Jake. It was embarrassing, and I feel terrible since he did this for me. Dan doesn't blame me, only Jake. Does Jake have a history of this? Likely. He was fired from another job, and my parents claimed the manager was unfair, but I suspect Jake's actions were the cause. Are my parents always this enabling? Yes, they've always expected me to clean up Jake's messes. Inspired by your advice, I sent my parents a calm but firm email. I said I love them and Jake but won't ask Dan to risk his career. I stressed Jake must face his actions and that I won't engage if they're just going to guilt-trip me. They haven't responded, though I know they read it. Their silence feels like punishment. I texted Jake, offering to talk but saying I can't fix this. He didn't reply, just posted another dramatic social media jab about fake family. I'm standing firm, thanks to your support. I've also started looking for a therapist to work through this guilt. I'll update if things change. Update 2. I hoped for a calm resolution, but my parents escalated things. They've used the silent treatment before. Once in high school, they froze me out for a week when I refused to cancel plans to help Jake until I gave in. This time I'm holding strong, thanks to Dan and your advice. But my parents took it further. Dan came home upset, saying my dad emailed his boss, complaining about Jake's firing, calling it unfair, and claiming Jake took the items because his pay was too low. I was appalled. Dan's boss, thankfully reasonable, told him to ensure it didn't happen again. Dan apologized, mortified. I was furious. Who contacts their son-in-law's workplace over this? I sent my parents a short, angry email, telling them never to interfere with Dan's job again and warning that this could end our relationship. I called my mom, too mad to deal with Dad. She acted like I forced their hand by not helping Jake, saying they had to act because I wouldn't. I told her their actions were unacceptable, but she kept defending Jake. I lost my temper, said they're wrong to demand I fix this, and hung up. They've gone silent again. Jake sent a snarky text saying, "Nice job yelling at Mom." I didn't respond. His refusal to own up is maddening. Dan and I are focusing on our home, and his work considers the issue closed. I'm bracing for more drama. Update 3. I thought things might settle, but my mom reached out, wanting to talk alone. She's always been the gentler parent, using guilt to smooth conflicts. If I upset Dad as a kid, she'd urge me to apologize for the family's sake. I agreed to meet her. She came over, looking exhausted and teary. Dan stayed nearby but gave us space. Mom said she missed me and hated our rift. I said I missed her too. But she quickly pivoted, begging me to help Jake, not necessarily with Dan's company, but maybe another job through Dan's contacts or mine. She called it a compromise. I explained calmly that I've helped Jake repeatedly, but he lost this job through his actions. He needs to face consequences, and I can't keep bailing him out. I told her how hurt I was by their blame and the email to Dan's boss. She cried, saying they're desperate because Jake's their son. I said shielding him only hurts everyone. I even mentioned how enabling prevents growth, thanks to your insights. She kept crying, saying she wished I'd forgive Jake and help. It broke my heart. I teared up, saying I don't want our family split but can't fix this. Then she said Dad won't speak to me until I make it right, and asked if Dan could give Jake another chance elsewhere in the company. I realized she wasn't listening. I said no, Dan can't and won't, and Jake burned that bridge. I reminded her Dan kept Jake out of legal trouble. She nodded but seemed unmoved. In the end, she said if I won't help, she can't sway Dad. She left saying, "We love you, please reconsider." We hugged, both crying, but I held firm, my doors open but not to fix Jake's life. No resolution, just more silence. Final update. Months have passed and we're still estranged. No meaningful contact with my parents or Jake. Missing family traditions hurt. I cried one holiday, waiting for a call that never came. A cousin said my parents got Jake a job through a friend's connection, so he's working again. I hope he doesn't waste it, but their pattern of bailing him out continues. It eases my worry about his finances, but it's his responsibility now. I've been attending therapy, which helps me process the guilt, anger, and grief of losing my family, at least for now. My marriage is stronger than ever. Dan's support has been incredible, reminding me I'm not heartless for setting boundaries. I still hope for reconciliation, but only if they meet me halfway, which they haven't. I'm at peace knowing I can't fix this alone. My door's open if they want a real relationship, not one based on guilt. Thank you all for your support. Your advice gave me the strength to stand firm, and I'm grateful.